So moving right along from taking away from 100, now what do we do when we have problems like 84 minus 59? Most of us, when we were taught how to do this, we were always told, always write it vertically. Why? Because our teacher told us to. Well, we want our scholars to understand that writing it vertically can actually help us to sort out the tens place and the ones place much better. There's actually a reason for doing that. When we do this, it's easier to see how we can group tens and ones, which is what they're familiar with doing. So in our classroom, we've learned about Mr. Green and Mrs. Green. There's these characters in our math curriculum who own a grocery store, and they have different ways of calculating things. And so Mr. Green likes to expand his numbers. The kids might come home saying that he's the fat one. That's because he expands his belly just like he expands his numbers. So when we expand 84, we know that 84 is made up of 80 and 4 because 8 tens is 80 and 4 ones is 4. 59 expanded is 50 and 9. So what Mr. Green likes to do, or what we call as the expanded method, is that we are expanding these numbers. That 84 minus 59 is the same thing as 80 minus 50 and 4 minus 9. The problem with this, though, is we can do the 10 subtraction because we can take 50 from 80, but we cannot take 9 from 4. It's just impossible. But I always remind the kids that we're not just working with 4. We actually have 84. So that's why these numbers, while they're separated to show our subtraction, they're really together. And that's why our whole exchange can actually happen. So when we're doing the expanded method, we can see that, well, our ones place we have some difficulties. So we're going to need to do something to get us more ones. Well, we have those tens over there. Now, the midway between this method, the last method and this method, is that we can still represent this visually with some drawings. So 8 tens and 4 ones can be represented like so. And we're going to take away by crossing them out, just like we did before. Well, we can't take away 9, so let's do something about that. Well, the kids know that, oh, well, we can go over to these tens and trade out 10 ones for a 10 stick. So remember, we show our trade with a arrow. This is no longer a 10 stick. It's actually, we're ungrouping it. That's a key vocabulary term. We're ungrouping this group of 10 stick into 10 ones. And I just put a little box around it so they can see that that was the 10 ones that were in the 10 stick. That 10 ones plus the 4 that we already had now actually gives us 14 ones that we exchanged for. But since we exchanged this 1 10, we now only actually have 7 tens left. 7 tens is the same thing as 70. Is this starting to look a little more familiar now? It should, because now we have our 2 subtraction problems set up to where they are possible. We can say 14 ones minus 9 ones is going to give us 5 ones left. 70 minus 50 is going to give us 20. And so we see that 20 and 5 together gives us 25. I need to represent this in our picture as well. 14 minus 9, if they need to cross them out, they can do so. And then in the tens, they can cross that out as well to show 25 is what we have left over. Okay, so the final and ultimate goal for subtracting 2-digit numbers is going to be called the ungrouped first method. In our classroom, we call this Mrs. Green's way. Mrs. Green is Mr. Green's wife, and she likes to do things the quick and easy way. However, Mrs. Green took the time to learn all of the other ways before she went to ungroup first. Because if we don't understand the other ways conceptually, then ungroup first is not going to make a lot of sense to us. So those of us adults, we recognize this as the regular old algorithm for how to subtract. The issue with doing this first is that if the scholars don't understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, they are not ready for this step. So we're going back to our same problem as before, 84 minus 59. Ms. Green also likes to separate her, write her problems in vertical form because we can still show the tens place and the ones place very easily. That's the reason we write horizontally. So when we ungroup first, that's when we look at our two problems. Now before with Mr. Green, we actually expanded these two numbers so that we could see what they're really worth. Well, if the child understands that concept, then they don't have to necessarily write out every single time what the expansion is. They can say, okay, I know I have 8 tens and I'm trying to take away 5 tens. That's okay. I can do that. No problem. But they also see then I've got to look at my ones because we're trying to see if we need to ungroup anything first. In my ones place, I've got 4 ones and 9 ones, and that's a problem because I can't have 4 of something and take away 9. So if we have to ungroup something, then we're going to do that first thing before we do anything else so that we can have a correct subtraction equation. So when we do that, we know we are still representing this in the same way. When scholars are ready for this method, they know that I can break apart one of these tens and put them with the ones. Many of us know this as borrowing, but we're not borrowing anything. This 84 is ours. It's all the same thing. So we're not really borrowing from the tens because we're not going to give it back. We are simply ungrouping one group of 10 and turning them into 10 ones. So when we ungroup one group of tens and make them into 10 ones, that means that we have taken away one of these tens, leaving 7 tens, and we have added 10 more ones to what we already have. Well, 10 more ones plus 4 is 14 ones in all. Right now, we have what is the regular standard algorithm of subtraction. Now, scholars can either choose to subtract from the tens place first or the ones place first. It really doesn't matter because we've ungrouped first. So, if your scholar is doing 7 minus 5, and that's 2, and 14 minus 9, and that's 5, that's okay because they've ungrouped first. Again, if your child does not understand it conceptually and can draw a model representing it, then they are not ready for this step of instruction conceptually yet. So as much as the information as that was, I sure hope that it was helpful for you to see the progression of this concept and how it's being taught in the classroom so that you can also utilize the same terms at home and help encourage your child to choose a method that makes sense to them. I ask you to please don't hesitate to email me or ask questions if you still would like to have a little more training in this. It is much different than the way that many of us learn, but remember that our ultimate goal is that the scholars would be able to do it with that quick ungroup first method towards the end. That's our goal, but we can't reach our goal without having a conceptual understanding of what subtractions really is and what's really happening. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this. I hope that this is a tool that can help you and can help your child as well.